Hello, and welcome to the second series of Rhythm Section's Future-Proof Masterclasses. I'm really happy to introduce our fifth guest in the series, the godfather of UK Garage, repeat Daft Punk collaborator, Grammy winner Todd Edwards. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Before we dive into things, I'll just briefly explain what Future-Proof is all about. Rhythm Section is a South London-based record label and dance that has been releasing music and throwing parties for over a decade now. Future-Proof is Rhythm Section's 6-month artist development program designed to support 6 emerging DJs and producers from across England to develop their individual skill and industry know-how, ready to become future leaders in the electronic music scene. We created Future-Proof so that we could share the knowledge and expertise our team and peers have accumulated over the years to demystify the industry, level the playing field, and equip aspiring artists with the skills they need to build long-lasting careers in music. For this second year of Future-Proof, we're taking the program on tour. This evening, we're at the brilliant Cobalt in Newcastle. Thank you to Cobalt for having us. And over the last 5 months, we've traveled to Bristol, Manchester, Leeds, and London, holding a masterclass and an after party in every city we visited. I'm Amelia. I've worked at Rhythm Section for nearly 8 years now, and I'm one of the team running Future-Proof alongside Emily and AKA Echo Juliet, Bradley, and the rest of the Rhythm Section team. So back to the reason we're all here today. Todd, a pioneering producer and DJ in the chronicles of music history, Todd began his career producing house records primarily for New York's Nervous Records in the 1990s, influenced by the likes of MK, Todd Terry, and Masters at Work. An early 4-4 approach developed into what would become his trademark sound, a collage of cut-up samples over swing house beats and lively disco-flavored bass lines, earning him an enthusiastic following in underground dance music circles. Eventually, this sound made its way across the pond, and here began a union of subcultures that would see Todd credited for inventing UK Garage. So Todd, welcome to Newcastle. How are you today?
I'm very good. I'm sleep deprived, but I'm very good.
Great. Sorry to hear that. So this talk is going to have a loose theme of setting your own standards, both as an artist and in the music industry. But we all need an entry point. So it makes sense to start at the beginning, which by your own admission was through somewhat imitation of the artist that you were listening to in that 90 to 93 period of house music. Can you tell us a bit more about those early influences and how they kickstarted things for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you first start making music, imitation is the starting point. And I absolutely loved Masters at Work, was my 2 favorite artists. Kenny Dope Gonzalez is a master drum machine programmer. I still think he's the best in the industry. And Literally Vega was just amazing at playing keys and stuff. So I always tried to emulate Kenny Dope's drums. Then MK came out with his Push the Feeling Nightcrawlers dub, where it was just the loop of these cut-up vocals that weren't saying anything. And I loved that idea because before that, no one was doing vocals like that, making loops. So those were 2 of the major influences. Todd Terry played a role in the fact that every time he would drop a Todd Terry record, you knew it was Todd Terry. And I love that concept. And I just wanted to develop my own signature. So when you dropped the Todd Edwards record, you knew it was me. Adding to those 3 major influences, I took a break from listening to disco and house for a bit when I was listening to it a lot. And I started to dabble into listening to new age music. And I started listening to Enya. And she had, she used her voice for instruments, a lot of chords. And I thought, well, what if I, did cut up vocals, but use the vocals as instruments instead of just using contemporary instruments. Plus, I only had this sampler that had 30 seconds of sample time, and I didn't have any major keyboards. So I needed something else to fill the void of making a track. So I was hey, I could just sample little tidbits of music and vocals.
Amazing. And how important do you think that initial grounding was in allowing you then to explore and find your own authentic voice, kind of having those initial, masters to kind of admire and bounce off?
Oh, I mean, I mean, like, I still to this day will give them full credit for, like, if there was no MK, there'd be no Todd Edwards. And I definitely, used Kenny Dope's drum programming as the basis for me trying. I'd like, if you listen to my early tracks, I could like go track for track of me trying to copy what Kenny Dope is doing. And then I found out like Little Louie's keyboard playing, like I would try to listen to the chords he was playing and try to learn music theory more. Like I took piano lessons for a while, improv. So that definitely was like the base of learning to play keys, and then just listening to music like his and trying to emulate that. And then finding out that his influence was Roy Ayers from the 70s. And if you listen to Roy Ayers, you can hear how much it influenced Little Louie.
And so was it a conscious decision to then start kind of branching out and experimenting, or was it something that happened quite organically? I know you've mentioned Enya already, but was that something that just happened as you were kind of playing around, or was it like, I need to try something else here?
I think like it was just a building block. You know what I mean? I was sitting in my parents' basement on the keys, just experimenting, trying to come up with I was intentionally trying to come up with a signature sound, and then just something clicked, and it just seemed to get easier and easier, like to find samples and turn them into patterns in the music. What else? Yeah, so I would say that answers it. So.
That's cool. So starting to make and release music, did you have any idea of what you wanted to achieve as a producer? Did you ever imagine that you might be able to make a living from doing this, or was it kind of just for the fun of it?
I think starting off, like getting out of high school, you just have delusions of grandeur of like being famous. That's like your first, adolescent thought process. But then once I got out of high school, I dove into house music, and I just, there was something about it, just like the funky soulfulness of it. And, I didn't anticipate what was going to happen, but I wanted to try to be successful. The funny thing is one of my friends from school introduced me to house music and gave me a little lesson on people like Todd Terry and looking at producers on labels and figuring out which labels you like. But I forgot, what was it? Just lost my train
Basically thinking about if you had ideas of what you wanted to achieve as a producer, or kind of just like figured it out as you went along.
So I lost my train of thought with this.
Don't worry. Also, we should
ask
say
the question.
that,
What was the question again? The original question you said.
So starting to make and release music, did you have any idea of what you wanted to achieve as a producer, or did you ever imagine that you might be able to make a living out of this, or was it kind of just...
Yeah, okay, that was what I was going to say. So my first thing after the fame thing and just getting into the music, my brain was rushing. The first thought you have is like, if I could just see my name on a record, like, you know what I mean? Like that was the first thing. And, I was on 111 East Records there was one, I was actually with this Italian guy, and I did a remix before I even did a regular track. Like, who remixes before they do a regular track? For some Italian singer named Marisha Jones. And I didn't have my style at that point. I was like ripping off Steve Silk Curly's style. Then I went on to 111 East Records, and I still didn't really have my style, but it was James Branton of 111 East Records that said, you should start sampling your drum sounds instead of using your drum machine, because it could be stronger. And I started to, make drum patterns with samples instead. So I have to thank him for that. And then so I saw my name on the record, and then like, okay, now you want your record played. And, Tony Humphries was the first person that played my music on the radio. I remember first night, it was like listening to his show on a Friday night, and all of a sudden I heard my track come on, and I'm like, oh my God. And I went outside, and my friend Rich actually pulled up because he was delivering pizzas in his car that night, and he got out of the car and gave me a hug. He's like, oh my God, it's on the radio and stuff like that. So, but then you just want more and more to a certain extent. So it's like, now it's like, I just want to remix a record, and it's like, but these are the stepping stones. It's like, you do need achievements. I've always been more achievement driven, and the idea of creating art has always been the first step. And then it just kind of grew from there into part-time and then full-time.
Okay, so was there any particular moment that you sort of realized that this was a viable path for you? And if so, was there any shift in mindset or approach at this point in terms of how you were kind of going at it?
I mean, I was going to college for marketing just in case the music thing didn't work. But, my intent was to put all I had into music. Even when I was going to school, I wasn't going to school. I'd be like showing up like for class once in a while and study last minute because I was always just wanting to be in the studio making music. So that was always the intent. It took a while. I mean, there was a lot of ups and downs. Even when I, started to have success, the thing of it is as an indie artist, you're only making a certain amount of money. And I wasn't DJing when I was young. I made the decision to focus on one thing and do it well. So I gave up the idea of, even though I started DJing when I was 17, I stopped and just focused on making music. So if I DJ'd at the time, I probably would have cleaned up. And now I have a Patreon because, I'm trying to pay my bills.
Yeah, it's not easy. So thinking about getting into this place where you began to find your own distinctive sound, do you think there were any thought processes or creative processes, tools that allowed you to keep doing things your own way and kind of not get swept along with what others were doing at the time?
What kept me from getting swept up was basically I developed something that started to pick up in England. It was funny because my only frame of reference was New York at the time, and I would literally just go to this one club, Sound Factory Bar, to hear Little Louis spin on a Wednesday night. It was called the Underground Network Party, and I just wanted to hear him play my tracks. And he played a couple, but it wasn't really. And I understand in retrospect, it really wasn't his sound per se. And I had, I was like a whiny little kid about like, I want him to play my music, and. John Ciafone from Mood to Swing said, he's like, New York's not the only market. And I'm like, well, what else is there? And like, so, this is before the internet. So like narrow minded. And until like, a DJ friend, DJ Camacho, who would DJ in the basement of the Sound Factory Bar was like, you're big in Italy. And I'm like, really? So my friends would make fun of me for that. And then they're like, you're blowing up in England. And like, I don't know. It's like the only way you would know that is if you were reading a magazine or seeing a post, or if you're making charts and stuff like that. So, but the work on Nervous Records definitely put me on the map. And then also the stuff I was doing on iRecords put me on the map. And people like Tough Jam and especially DJ EZ, and they definitely helped to spread the sound, so I'm very thankful for them.
I know EZ booked you for your first show.
Yeah,
in the UK.
Yeah, we were waiting. Yeah, that was crazy, and that was years later. Like that was almost on the decline of garage at the time. When you think about it, because garage kind of hit a low point in 2006, and I think it was like 2003 where I played that first official gig in front of like 2,500 people.
Because I know you mentioned that you didn't really see yourself as a DJ to start with, so you kind of put off that,
Yeah, and and then there was a massive amount of stage fright that I had. So,
that set is on YouTube, by the way.
What's that?
Not to play onto your stage fright, but you can watch that set on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I had a full copy recording of I still have it on like a DVD Amazing. Of that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Have you got it up on your platforms anywhere?
No, well, one of the guy that it's so common. The guy that recorded it, like, was claiming that he owned it officially. So I was like, I ended up putting I can't be bothered with it. I was like, fine, just take it. I mean, the viral video is out there, so yeah, and I have the copy for myself, so I'm good.
So you think that when you kind of discovered that your music was big in the UK, that was the point that you started to delve into what music was big here, and then that kind of informed the direction that your music went? Is that kind of how it?
Well, what happened is I was always so afraid of being too repetitive that after I was did the Nervous projects and some stuff on iRecords, I always followed the inspiration. So Masters at Work started to mess around with doing live bass on their music, and they seemed like they were getting into more of a disco sound. So I started to sample. I was still sampling, but I was doing more disco-y remixes and stuff, until my manager was like, your other style is, if you listen to the early 90s stuff, there's disco style remixes, and then there's the really cut up garagey stuff. And he's like, the garagey stuff is the stuff that's really working. And I'm like, but I moved on. And it was funny because, I was like, I almost had to relearn how to do my own sound. So, and the first track I did where I felt I had to relearn my sound was a track called Never Far From You, which is still remembered today. So I guess I revisited it and did okay with it. So
yeah. And it's so interesting hearing you talk about, being in New York pre-social media and not having any idea of how your music is kind of being received elsewhere. Obviously now we live in this culture of comparison because of social media and being maybe a bit too aware of how our, we're being perceived in places far away from where we are. And that can be quite paralyzing. I'm wondering if there's been a time when you've received this kind of exposure and when, exposure to everything that your peers are doing, and whether that's affected you in your musical output.
Well, to be honest, it's good. I pay a social media guy to help post stuff when I'm not making silly videos to post.
If I could, I would.
But I can only spend a very little bit of time on Instagram. Even though I'm successful and I'm established as an artist, it's like you go on Instagram and the whole thing just feels like brag book. And I know that is not the intention of the artist on there, because everyone is just trying to promote their own music and to get bookings and to get paid and to pay the bills. But it's just, you go scroll through and it's just like, it just feels like it's look at me. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, it's like, cause I got to do it but it's just like, if there's a twinge of jealousy or a feeling of like coveting someone else or feeling like there's a comparison, like I don't want that type of energy. So I stay off of it quite a bit, and just focus on what I do. And I figured if I'm feeling that way, how many other people that are not self-aware are feeling that way? So it can be very toxic.
And you mentioned that you have someone that you pay to kind of help with social media. Are there any other ways that you sort of keep the blinkers on to stay focused on what you're doing?
Well, I think like I said, limiting the time that you're on social media, and then realizing that, again, they always say like life looks better on Instagram or Facebook, and there's a certain amount of illusion to it. I mean, I'm not saying that people aren't successful. We are, but they're showing the best moments. They're never showing the down times or when gigs are less, or there's a pandemic and you can't go out and you can't pay the bills because there's no money coming in.
Yeah. So. I know that you mentioned when we spoke before that there was a time when you were kind of trying to be really open to everything and listening to a lot of what was going on out there. But it became a little bit overwhelming, or, was starting to make you feel a bit self-conscious. And
I mean, when I first established this sound that everyone was like trying to replicate, it's like having the secret recipe to Coca-Cola or Kentucky Fried Chicken, and or being the first person that invented the DVD player. So you're not really. I was living in my own little bubble. Like I always joke around, like I'm the last person you want to ask about UK garage, because I wasn't paying attention to what other people were doing. I was just doing my own thing, and presumptuously, I was in my mind was just wanting to teach people that you could use different style chords to make dance music. Because I felt that at a certain point in the early 90s, that house music was using the same chords over and over again, and there was no diversity in the sounds that they were using. So I started to explore, instead of using disco and R&B, I was sampling from folk music and trying to come up with chord ideas. I mean, sometimes I would get a little out there. Like, I sampled from some like sci-fi music for some TV shows, and it's kind of got a weird sound. But like, again, I just felt like this is what I want to do with this power is share, and, presumptuously educate people. Yeah. But I kind of feel like it's a little arrogant to say that, but that was my intent.
Yeah, fair enough. So, we know that fear of failure can be a real killer of creativity. And as an artist, you're doing something incredibly vulnerable and putting an expression of yourself out there into the world. How have you been able to like tackle or overcome this feeling?
A couple things. First of all, I mean, I'm thankful that I've actually done, like at 52, I can say that I had an established style. And I won a Grammy, and that was pretty epic, and never expected that to happen. But the thing is, I have had ups and downs, and part of it was having, I had a manager that used negative reinforcement, so it was almost like that kind of kept me humble. I don't agree with negative reinforcement as a style of keeping someone motivated. But also the other thing is my popularity was 3,000 miles away. And again, there was no internet at the time. So basically I knew I was successful based more on the work that was coming in. Like I was getting some major label remix work, and I was seeing my music getting charted in like DJ Magazine or something like that. And it wasn't until that night that I had that first official gig did I really make the connection of the popularity, because people were just cheering after every track that I played. So I was like, oh, you could see the expression. I'm like, oh my God, like, but it was like until you experience that,
I remember you saying that good music will find its audience.
Yes. I believe that, I still believe that's the case. I think, there's multiple levels now. I mean, I'm glad that I was able to make a mark early on, because I wouldn't want to have to deal with all the things you have to go through with social media and the amount of flooded saturation of music that gets put out every day. It's frustrating to me that it's, and again, you see posts about this online, but that it's become less about the music and more about the attention on social media. I feel like the music should be the foundation of your success, not.
How do we do that? How do we put the music back to the forefront?
It's hard to say. Audiences, if they're being programmed to just think that this is the way you're experiencing it, you just kind of either have to wait for the next generation to embrace something else. It's almost like counterculture is, okay, this generation did this. I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. And hopefully people get back to music. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still people that appreciate good music and train spotters out there. But I think that, audiences are going to have an experience, it's like, yeah, this is a great party. And this is like, where I think back in the day, it was more like going to clubs and dancing off a shitty week at work, or just your frustrations and just being in the dark, people smoking a little herb and just having some fun listening to music.
Yeah, it's a lot harder now to be kind of fully present in the moment with all the distractions.
Yeah, and I heard that like the club scene has been like closing down in England, and
it's rough. Early. Yeah, it's tough here. Like a lot of grassroots venues, amazing ones like this are kind of hanging on, but it's sadly not been the case for lots of others.
It's happening in Brooklyn as well, like in New York and stuff like that. The only thing that I can say is I heard that like younger audiences don't want to stay out late. I can totally relate to that. Like, making gigs earlier, I'm so for that right now. So.
It's probably good for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So thinking back to that kind of thinking again about creative flow or process, I'd love to know, I know you mentioned before about kind of sampling sci-fi shows and stuff, but I'd love to know how important play and experimentation is for you in discovering new sounds or directions.
It still is. Even if there still seems like there's some formula to it, I'm constantly looking for new sounds. My latest thing, like the first quarter of the year, I was feeling like uninspired, and it was kind of frustrating. And then I started to embrace AI. And, during the time where music became downloadable for free, a lot of distributors went under and record labels went under, and we were all caught off guard. And I never want to get caught off guard. So it's like I try to stay on top of things better. And AI right now is definitely a good tool to use. It's kind of the Wild West, the way sampling was the Wild West in the 90s. But there's so many innovative ways to use AI to come up with interesting patterns and interesting palettes of sounds. Even just the idea that now you have AI that can make full songs in any genre of music. And hey, I could sample that instead of taking a risk in sampling a disco record and trying to get it licensed. It's indistinguishable. It's crazy.
I saw that Timbaland started an AI label.
Did he really?
I think so.
Maybe I should start an AI label.
I think a lot of artists at the moment are kind of wondering how to reconcile this embracing of AI alongside the question of authenticity. How did you approach this? Is this something you've thought about much?
I mean, I was concerned, 2 years ago when I first started hearing AI make pop music is so simplistic. I was like, call me when you can do Fleetwood Mac, and then I'll be worried. And now they can do Fleetwood Mac, it's like, you can make a funk record. And then the funny thing is like literally you can tell it to do it and it'll give you 2 versions in 60 seconds. It's crazy. But the one thing it could shrink the market for artists. I had just had this discussion. I think people that make music for say commercials or even for video games or something like that, like people could just be like, I need to promote this new antidepressant, and AI will come up with a sad song to promote or something. But as far as making music, when you have people come up to you and be like, your music got me through a rough time in college. You're not going to say that to an AI. There's the people still need connection to humans, and it's true. It's like AI can only take the culmination of what's out there, but it's not going to. It's not at the point right now that it's going to come up with its own new ideas to go on top of. Will that change? It might, but there's always going to be a need for the human connection. So I'm not too stressed about it. Right now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about creative processes and we're all susceptible to writer's block. So how do you get into that mindset where you feel able to try new or unfamiliar things? Do you have any studio routines or, for getting the creative juices flowing?
I just try to get off the couch and get to the studio before midday, which is very difficult these days. I've been so lazy. It's crazy. I mean, the thing of it is, as I've gotten older, it used to be I had a producer when I was very young just tell me to eat, sleep, and shit music. And yeah, I think when you're young and you're hungry for it and whatnot, it's a good approach, but you can start dry heaving your creativity. And one thing that I learned along the way is you do need to take breaks. And that doesn't just mean sitting and watching TV, because that's what I would do. And my head was still in the studio. So I was never really getting any quality time. Take yourself out, do some activity, give yourself a breather, But as far as just being creative, I found, and there was another producer named Jesse Rose that says he spends 4 hours in the studio. I'm like, I kind of like that idea. But it's just honestly, I don't need a lot of time to do what I do now, because experiences help me to speed up the process without compromising the integrity of the music. But after 4 hours, my brain starts to turn to mush. So it's I give myself the time. I've learned new techniques for sampling and categorizing my samples into their proper key, things to speed up the process without that it was just a waste of time in the past. You
mentioned able to note as well.
Oh yeah, able to note. It's worth every penny of the £8 or $8. I don't travel first class, and sometimes you're on the plane. You can't open a laptop. I always get cursed with being behind the guy that wants to lay all the way back. So there's no way you're going to open up a laptop. But Able to Note has all the stock sounds that they come with on the phone, and then you can upload your own sounds to it. And it's like a little drum machine. And it's funny because I haven't worked on a drum machine since the early 90s. I started to change to just put all my drums on keys and stuff. And it's a totally different experience working on a drum machine setup than it is to put your stuff on keys. And I can actually work very quickly in it. And then you can just put the session right into Ableton and upload it that way. Mm-hmm. So it's I did a remix of one of my tracks, Rain, that I collaborated with Sermonology and Rudimental. I basically did a remix on the plane and played it when I got there. Just had to add a bass line and I was good to go. It's really helpful.
Nice. And you talked about having a break there. I know that you had quite a big break at one point in your career.
I've had many breakdowns. Okay. There's a breakdown.
I said break, yeah. Right. And did you find that you kind of came back? How did that break kind of change the way you came back to?
Well, I mean, the thing of it is the money, again, it came down to there's so many ups and downs in the career. Garage hit a low point in around 2006, and I had just put out, put my blood, sweat, and tears into an album called Odyssey, and it didn't really do anything. And like no one really wanted it as far as like labels. So we put it on iRecords, and it, like I said, it wasn't really bringing in money there. And I was solely a producer, so. With Garage kind of like, and that was funny because I was still getting work. I would be coming to England and people were like, Garage is dead, mate. Garage. And like, I'm still getting work, but it did slow down. And like I said, that was the time where piracy came into play, and it really did. It shook everything up and changed the way people made money off of music. But at the time, it was almost like, I'm watching my funds go down, and it was almost like too late to start a DJ career. And my first manager was kind of going left field with his own life, and like I needed to bail. And basically, I took a 2-year hiatus working customer service job, and it was just frustrating because like you're seeing your friends fall off and get married. And like, at the time, it's like I'm thinking like, well, I'm living at home with my parents and I don't have money. Like, hey, I'm very dateable right now. It's like, So, but as I, when I did this customer service job, I was making good money, and then I still had royalties coming in from publishing, but I was dying inside every day. Like a little part of me was like almost in tears at my desk. Customer service is not my thing, but it did give me enough money, like to jump back out there. And I had this kind of epiphany one day. It was like I was going to be late for work, and I'm like, I just can't go in today. I just couldn't go in. And I had this vision. I'm like, if I see myself in the coffin at the end of my life, and I'm like, what would I regret more? Getting married, having a family, and not doing music, or doing music and, not having the family? And and my feeling was I'd regret not doing the music. So at the height of the American recession, there was a recession. I jumped back in and started going. And there was a couple moments that I didn't know what was going to happen. An Icelandic volcano went off, and there was all the gigs got canceled. And then I injured my neck at the gym, and that canceled a whole bunch of other gigs. I'm like, oh, he might be going back to work again, And then all of a sudden, a couple things came in on Ministry of Sound. I had reconnected with Daft Punk, and they asked me to work on their Ram album. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates opened up. I moved to LA, and in that next year, I won a Grammy. And so I always say there's a fine line between the guy that's been living at home with his parents for way too long and a Grammy Award winner. So never give up.
That's amazing. Yeah. And are there still, ambitions that you have about what you might want to achieve in your career? It's not over
Absolutely. Yet. The problem is, I'm not a machine. It would be great if I was a more efficient machine. I mean, I think I turn out a good amount of work, but it's almost like it's like a juggling act. Like you're juggling with one hand, making music to pay the bills and DJing to pay the bills, and you want to add something new. Like I feel like I haven't proven myself at what I can do, because the style that I do and the way I use samples can be put into any style of music. It doesn't have to just be dance music. It could be mid-tempo. It could be used for, an array of things. I want to prove to everyone else and to myself that I can do that. I mean, I've done little things here and there. I'm really excited. I've been working with Joy Anonymous on stuff on their album, which has a different range of music. So I'll get to show some of that there, and I hope to keep building on that. And I'm starting a new label called Hot Records, House of Todd. I'm excited about that. That's coming out. Amazing. Yeah. So I have all this music that I made during the pandemic to put out there, but it's going to be obviously I'm going to have other artists on the label, but it's going to be my self-expression and my ability to put out what I like to put out. And to circle back around with what you were saying about people pleasing, I mean, like for the early time, I was just in my own little bubble, and I felt like I needed to be more open to what other people were doing. And it did influence me. And I went on this kind of bit of a journey, like where, it's almost like too much comparison too. Like you're like, oh, I can, make stuff a little more like that or make it like that. And then you kind of like dilute what your initial vision is. So I've gotten to a place where I'm like, I just went back to being me. But, what I do is I try to listen to other people's work, take it in, and see how my brain interprets it in my own work. Like not with it's expectation, like, oh, I need to do something like that. But just to see, how does that track affect me, or how does that style of dance music affect me, and what can I do with that?
Yeah. I think maybe we can kind of round things off with one last question, because we've got a little Q&A afterwards as well.
I know I rambled on I told you.
No, you haven't actually. It's been good. So yeah, just to maybe squeeze one parting question in. Do you have any sort of final tips or advice for surviving the ups and downs, the twists and turns of a 30-year career in music industry?
Well, the one thing I have to say is make sure you plan out a nest egg, because that definitely, you don't realize how quickly the journey is from 25 to 50. It goes really quickly. So put some money aside just so you can retire at some point. And, but the other thing is I still would say and urge, try to come up with something that's singularly you, like have a personality, whether you're a DJ or a producer. You want people to be listening to you because you sound like you, not because you're just trying to be what everyone else is doing, I mean, some people are successful that way, but if you want longevity, I think having a signature and having a personality as a DJ, as a producer, is going to take you there and keep you there more so than if you're just trying to make a hit record. Don't make music because you're looking to be famous or because you're looking to be popular on social media. Do because you have something to express to the world.
Love that. Great note to end on, I think. Thank you so much for talking with us today,
Pleasure.
Todd. It's been a real pleasure.
Pleasure for me.
Before we begin the Q&A, I'll just say that this is all made possible by the generous support of Arts Council England and Beatport's Diversity and Parity Fund.
Beatport.
Ableton, Audio Technica and Cradle. Thank you for joining us.
Mine is still blank.